Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session. I'm sure I speak for the entire panel in thanking the Honorable Ministry of Information Broadcasting and FICCI for giving us the pleasure and the honor of being a part of this panel. May I now request Ms. Nidya Sekhar, Additional Secretary, Ministry of INB, to make her keynote address. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ahuja. The discussion today is on film production and the challenges faced and lessons learned in the making of global films. So basically, we will be talking about globalization of Indian films, the content that we send abroad, or the rest of the facilities that we share with the world, and also how we live in a globalized world and the kind of opportunities these globalized platforms, the whole networks provide us in terms of expressing our talent all over the world. I can see that we have a very interesting set of panelists here who are themselves have been involved in international productions and are also looking forward to having more international productions and take our content abroad. We as an industry, the Indian industry, has a very unique distinction so far as the entertainment industry is concerned, because we have a unique style of entertainment in terms of song and dance and the stories that this is in addition to the beauty of cinema, the art of cinema that we create. The entertainment style that the Indian cinema generates across all language cinemas is extremely unique. I was just trying to categorize. I thought if I could categorize the kind of globalization we are engaged with, and then whether we could address it individually or collectively. So one I thought was the Indian films. I'm looking at the Indian film industry as in touch with rest of the world. Now there are various modes and various platforms and various ways in which we are touching different parts of the world. Let's say we first touch the rest of the world through film festivals or applying for awards in various categories in different competitive categories. So here we have been very active in this from let's say starting. There must have been many before that. Pathar Pancheli and Awara, Lagan, Salam Bombay, so many movies in the award-winning categories. Wherever we apply for awards and then we get. Then we have films that are commercially produced and released in rest of the parts of the world. Now that's another offering to the world, because what we offer in the film festivals or in the competitive categories is restricted mostly to the filmmakers or people who are associated with the industry. When we commercially release films, then they are available to everybody. Now, in everybody, they are also the Indian diaspora, people who have settled down in those particular countries from India, and also the rest of the people of that country, the international audience that we are talking about. That's another. We've had our films like if I talk about Awara and Muthu in Japan and Disco Dancer in Soviet Union, and from that time and till now Dangal in China and Master and Bahubali and so many of these. So there are films that we have been commercially taking to the rest of the world. Then there are films that award-winning films, but have Indian content. They could be produced in other countries, but they have Indian content. Tenet or Slumdog Millionaire or so many other films. Then there are films that, the global part, if I talk about, then there are films that are shot in foreign locations. That also takes us out. The content may be Indian, but the locations, the locales would be of various different countries. So that, in a way, globalizes our audience as well. As we look at rest of the parts of the world, it opens our eyes to the world, and it educates our audience. It probably promotes tourism in that particular country, but it opens up our eyes to the world. We have had so many of these, and I'm sure we've all seen films where we thought, now I'm going for a cruise, or now I'm going for a road trip, or now I'm going to all those beautiful places. And these are beyond the let's say conventional locations of Switzerland or London or New York. These are places maybe in Croatia or Tuscany or hinterland of Australia or New Zealand, and so there is a then we have the back end of productions, the international productions, where the back end is done in India. So the post-production facilities, the post-production part, or during the production, rest of the part is done in India. Then I thought we have a lot of icons who are Indian icons, but extremely popular abroad. They are the Indian film stars. They, even when they walk somewhere, they are taking Indian culture wherever they're going. They're that kind of icons who take Indian cinema in different parts of the world by very virtue of their being. I can talk about Amitabh Bachchan, I can talk about Rajnikant, I can talk about Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan. We have so many actors. There are many, but Priyanka Chopra, they've all done us proud, And interestingly, many of them are extremely popular in certain countries. That makes it very interesting. I mean, I don't know whether any producers, associations or groups or think tanks have ever studied why we become popular in certain countries. What is the commonality in certain cultures as to why certain kind of films, or whether there are certain kind of films that become popular in certain kind of, that kind of thought process, whether a study has gone into that or not. I don't know. I would like to learn from you, but that's another set of our type of globalization. Then there have been Indian actors who have starred or acted in films that are not produced in India. So there, the presence of Indian cinema or Indian actors, they may have been actors in India or not, or they could have been actors in those particular countries. But there is an Indian presence in many foreign productions. That's another way of looking at it. Whether this is both in the sector of web series or television series and films. So there's an Indian presence there. Then I felt there's another category where we have Indian music or Bollywood music or other language music in foreign films. I was actually pleasantly stunned to see Chamma Chamma in Moulin Rouge. The way they had integrated this song into that particular film. So in so many ways, we've seen Indian music, Indian background music, and I'm talking of music as a vocal music and also as an instrumental music separately, both ways, as a song and as purely as music. Both ways we have been present in different kind of films, many of them in Bollywood or European films or many other countries. Then, of course, we have our dear neighboring friends, neighboring countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, similar cultures who have really appreciated our films, our stories, because of the similarity of culture. But largely, as I'm trying to tell you, that the focus has been on commercial success in the countries, and sometimes it could have been certain discoveries about how commercially it expands into that market. But I also felt that we were looking at only certain countries, and there's immense scope. There are many cultures, there are many value systems, there are many areas, geographical areas which are untouched, and where we can still go on and reach out to them. There are areas where there is more emotional compatibility with the Indian way of life. I can talk about Latin America. I can talk about African countries. In African countries, there is a huge demand for Indian content. And I am not sure if, as a film industry, you guys ever sit together, or some of you, as to how to reach out to countries, or is each one on his own? That would be a very difficult situation, where each one is working on his or her own and trying to go to markets and without the support of anybody else. So as a group, maybe we can reach out to various cultures, nations who have grown together in the post-colonial world. There's so much common that we have. There's so much to share with each other, not only on the cultural part but also on the struggles of development over the years since the colonial powers left these countries. The development in a society is always it's a progress, and sometimes it is struggles, because you work between the status quo forces and the developmental forces. There are clashes, and then you move on and on. I can immediately think of a film like Naya Daur, which exemplified it so well. And of course, it at the end of it said that everything can go together. The mechanization and the human development and everything can go together. So these struggles of young nations, this is such a common value that we share with so many countries. And we need not always compare us with across the different worlds. Within our cultures, there is so much that we have to share with each other. So I think there are many areas that we can identify where, in fact, I would look at this forum and request you to share with us where are the areas where you would need governmental support, the ministry's support to move ahead. Because we have audiovisual agreements with many countries in terms of technical, creative, and manpower in the manpower fields. We have public broadcaster agreements with 30 plus countries, which means our television to their television. So when we say our television and their television, we have a platform open where we can also take in our films through that platform. So we showcase our films in those countries through the platform that is available with us through the public broadcasters. And we also take their content on our platforms and enrich our audience and educate our audience and open up the minds of our countrymen towards other cultures. That would be such a beautiful thing, and that can be done broadly and mainly with your support. We have this immense responsibility of educating our audiences to what is happening in the rest of the world, especially after the content on digital platforms has been, more easily available, and it's so more easily accessible. There is so much that we can broaden the minds of our people. it will help in our development. It will, people who are not able to travel to other parts of the world, for them it is a very, very educative experience to see how other cultures live. It is about equality, how we perceive other people, how we think that at the end of the day, we are all humans, we all have the same emotions, we all have basic family system. Family system, there's so many common things in the world. A family system, brother, sister, mother, parents or children, spouse. The family system is everywhere in the country, but sometimes one culture doesn't understand the other. But there's so many common things that the common thread that we can weave to understand other cultures and let other cultures understand and accept as well. So a lot of other areas like short films and documentaries and music and dance, Indian dance, even through the films, even through the Indian films. Our skilled workforce, our post-production and during the production facilities that we offer here. So much, globalized, global films we are talking about, I would say it is much more than the content that we see. It is also the day-to-day interaction that we have with each other during the production of these films or in various aspects of production. That's how it enriches us, how it brings us together in so many ways. This whole coming together of cultures and ideas at workplace. Content comes much later, but even at workplace, it gives us immense potential to further globalize. We have existing infrastructure, or let me say existing framework that we have as of now is in terms of, if I can say, or the government infrastructure that is available for us is, of course, one is the co-production agreements that I just talked about. Then we have the film festivals that where we take Indian films to other festivals. Even our national awards that we give, they also take our bring limelight to the kind of films that are made in India across the categories. And also the film facilitation office that we have here under NFTs. That's another interactive forum that has been provided to the film industry of India and other countries to work together. Now, we have the 75 years of India's independence. We'll soon be celebrating the occasion for a year-long celebration where we would like to take Indian films abroad to various film festivals. Just yesterday, we had a roundtable with many film festivals, organizers of many film festivals and film commissions. Leena ji was here and Dhanpreet was here. So we were talking to them as that we would like to share our films with you, and we would like to share the films of Satyajit Ray, whom we want to share with rest of the world during the 100 years of his birth centenary celebrations. So there was so much of openness about accepting and keenness about accepting Indian content that we felt that it was a very, very fruitful experience and talking to them. But here I'm actually looking forward to hearing from your side as to how we as the ministry, how we can support you in this further opening up for further avenues about going out to the world, bringing the world to us, opening up our minds. At the end of the day, a good human being is supposed to be an educated and enlightened human being. Whether you are in India or abroad, it doesn't matter. In a globalized world, we have to be an individual that respects each other, that is open to the ideas, the rest of the world, and that accepts the cultures of others and respects rest of the cultures. So that I think will make everybody a much better person. And there's always like it's full of learning, and cinema offers immense scope for that. I invite you and thank you, Nitin Ahuja ji, for giving me this opportunity, and Leena ji. I'm very keen to listen to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neerja ji. You made some very pertinent points, which I'm sure we'll be discussing very shortly. And very much, we would like to thank you for your very kind offer to, hear us out on the issues we have and probably help us as a government in resolving these. I'm sure post this session, we'll all get together and present you with some concrete help and steps you can take in that regard. So, from over the decades, we keep hearing of Indian cinema being on the cusp of crossing over to the global mainstream. Right from the time that the maestro Satyajit Ray's Pothar Panchali made waves here in Kane in 1950s, to Salam Bombay, to Lagan, Dangal, The Lunchbox, and recently Court. We have these occasional successes that make us very hopeful that we are on the verge of breaking out. We also have the success of international films with Indian themes and characters to encourage us. Films like Slumdog Millionaire, Life of Pi, The Namesake, Lion, Monsoon Wedding, Benedict Beckham. But I think we have to admit that the global success has been elusive for us, at least on a sustained and consistent basis. And I hope this discussion will help us in identifying where these shortcomings are and hopefully how we can overcome them. So I think to get this discussion started, may I request all the panelists to make brief opening remarks on why do you think we, Indian cinema, should actually be pursuing these global ambitions? Maybe Sureshi, you can get this started. Sureshi, please.
Thank you so much, Nitin, and thank you, Neerja ji, for that wonderful keynote. It really set the perspective. I've been, as you know, out of India for a very long time, and I've come back to explore producing after distributing 4 years and close to 100 films. And what I've always seen is cinema can help bring audiences from different backgrounds with such strength together, and it then helps them to understand the world around them. And this whole diversity that's of gender, ethnicity, sexuality, class, and the measure of success for that, I think, is moving towards, whether it's studios or us as independent producers, to make movies with casts and crews that better reflect society. And that means there's so much work ahead when you're talking about reflecting society and its reality. And what we are seeing now is 2 very good steps that have happened in the industry that we're all in. One is, of course, there's no more the constraint of language. And audiences have become language agnostic. We've been watching not just content from India, but we're watching content from Iceland, we're watching Finnish content, and audiences are very, very comfortable with reading subtitles. I think that's where India, we in leaps and bounds have a great advantage. One is there's not one Asia, there's not one India. And it's not just the 12 states that are producing the films. There's so much of diversity. There's so much of the plethora of stories that India has. And I think that gives us immense strength to explore this opportunity of language agnostic audiences that are evolving. What's also happening is audiences are wanting real stories. They're moving away from the usual trope of, the hero, the heroine, and the extreme villain and evil in stories that we've seen. And that gives us the advantage, I think, in India to explore stories of the real people and tell human stories. And I think the regional industries have got it, some of the regional industries have really got it right, like Malayalam and Marathi industries, where they're telling real stories of real people that the audiences can identify with. So I think what the need of the hour is, and of course, the advent of OTT has done that too. But I think what the need of the hour is, is, and of course, the advent of OTT has done that too. But I think what the need of the hour is, is, and of course, the advent of OTT has done that too. But I think what the need of the hour is, is, and of course, the advent of OTT has done that too. But I think what the need of the hour is, is, and of course, the advent of OTT has done that too. I'm trained and weathered in theatrical distribution. So while we did see a kind of a wane even before the COVID, that audiences were their preferences had changed on what content they would actually make an effort to go to the theaters and see. That has increased, and kind of I would say COVID has been a catalyst, whether it's a good or a bad, but that's what's happened. So what gives us, I think, an immense power is to, plunge into these plethora of stories, diversity of content, and look at local stories with the global edge that people can identify with. And that helps us in more ways than one in where the industry is headed.
Thank you. Sameer, your opening remarks?
Well, I basically sometimes get confused about the word global. Now, is global USA and Europe, or is it, I had the opportunity to be present during the premiere of Happy New Year that starred Shah Rukh and Abhishek in Morocco. And we were at the square at Marrakesh. And I have never seen that kind of a sea of people, coming to watch a movie. And this was, in the square in Marrakesh, and there were thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So this word global is kind of a little confusing, because Bollywood cinema always has done well in China. So I think it also comes back to audiences in India. I mean, audiences in India are very skewed towards a certain kind of cinema, which is Bollywood. Independent cinema, I've produced, 5 films. Most of them haven't haven't been theatrically released. So I think there is a big task, I think, for Indian studios too, to develop or expand the taste of Indian audiences. When you look for funding, for example, and you're looking for an international co-producer, the first question that comes to you is, how much money have you found from India? How much is your own country investing on this project? How much is, does your own country believe in your project? And when, the majority comes from India, yes, then you have the trust of the Indian audiences, and we trust in your film. So I think we need to introspect a little bit and look at the taste of our own audiences before we talk about globalizing our cinema. I mean, that's my thought.
Yeah, Samudrika, your thoughts, please.
Well, I feel like global cinema is a natural reaction to what's happening as a global trend in terms of the number of people traveling now compared to the last 30 years or the last 20 years. I feel like it's just a natural evolution of how we're seeing the world and how audiences are getting interested in other people and other cultures, which is now, for me, being in the US this long, I feel like there is, it's sort of led to Hollywood now understanding that there is a huge lot of people who are actually interested in seeing what they traditionally didn't think that people wanted to watch. So I think in many ways systems are shifting. The world is changing as is constant, but I think now more than ever it's sort of at a speed and a race that is unprecedented, and it's opened up, in ways that Parasite, for example, has become a revelation and a revolution for international cinema, which, I think 10 years ago or 20 years ago would have not had the platform or the sort of hunger that people would expect. I think it just gives countries like ours hope that Asian stories have that sort of, meaning and importance for what you would consider white people not being interested in watching. I think it's broken all those previous sort of ideas, and that's what for me is personally fascinating. And when you ask why it's important now more than ever, for me that's what it is. I think it's that we're moving, the world is moving, and quite naturally, cinema and our stories move with us.
Sunita ji?
My goodness, such a range of excellent perspectives and opinions. Good to hear all of them. For me, personally, I was born in India but raised in the US, went to NYU as a filmmaker and came back to India 15 years back. So I have seen the storytelling on both sides of the oceans. And what I see, and having a company of my own producing, and when I want to make a regional cinema, which is out of Hyderabad, and then want to make something out of Wales in England, the bridge is forming, but the bridge is very fluid right now. And it is in our hands as more or less the pioneers in global cinema to kind of make a foundation for that bridge. Whether it is the quality of storytelling that need to improve, like when I don't find good stories, I go to Korea and get them. Like Shreyasi was saying, I go to Finland and get them. Because I have that exposure, and all my films that have been remakes internationally have done very well in India. Like Nirjaji was talking about culture. So culture is very important to me. When I look for a story, I look from the Latin America, I look for Scandinavian, and I look for the Korean space, which has a cultural fabric that is of India. And when you adapt it into the Indian space, it works beautifully. So we as India, which has been a very hero-centric story, that is changing. I think the story is the hero now, and the last 1 year of the box office has shown to us that the story wins always. So that's where I think we need to be very open to, and there is a generation that is literally breeding and hungry for a new age cinema where we have inclusivity, we have diversity. So right now I'm getting ready to adapt a book. I signed up a British director, Phil John, and the first place I had to go to is the facilitation office, which has somehow accommodated me and took me on board and said that, let me connect you to the BFI. And I think these kind of facilities are helping international producers like me wanting to take cinema from India and bring to India. I think we need to have more opportunity and offices like this that allows us and allow us to collaborate globally. I think that's the need of the hour right now. Can I get a cinematographer from a Scandinavian cinema? Where should I go? Should I call an agent in Europe, or can I call somebody in India that can facilitate that for me? And if I want to bring my film from US to here to do a location recce, what are my top list of location recce managers I can look up to? I think this facilitation will help us greatly to make cinema from India to take global, and global cinema to bring to India. So.
Thank you, Sunita. And taking it up from there, let's get to the heart of this discussion, the challenges that we face in making a film that we hope will reach out to the international market. And you mentioned some just now, Sunita, and I would also like to know how much of a constraint is a budget. And to give people a sense of perspective, Avengers Endgame had a reported budget of $360 million. And a mainstream international Hollywood tentpole would have a budget of 200-250 million easily. In contrast, even your tentpole Indian releases rarely have a budget of more than 15 or max $20 million, 150 crores. So how much of a constraint is the budget, and what are the other constraints we face? So maybe Samir, you can get this started now.
So I think often budget budget depends on the script you have and the treatment of the film that you kind of are going to go ahead with. But often budget becomes a constraint when the marketing of the film takes place. I think Hollywood spends a lot more on marketing than we do, and but America has always tried to reach out to global audiences. They have a formula. Our formula is more internal, I feel. I mean, our formula is to sell the film to Indian audiences. And I don't think we, as an industry, we really care so much about, exporting our films. Yes, to the Indian diaspora, maybe, here and there. But we are not looking for really global audiences. So I think budget becomes a constraint when it comes to marketing. Beyond that, I think it's really the project And shooting in India also is so much cheaper than shooting, say, in America. So I think budget is very relative thing.
Samudrika, your thoughts on budgets and other constraints?
You know, I think budgets are changing. I think depending on our stories and how much interest there is from the West, I think there is more risk that's being taken by financiers because they now believe in them more. So I tend to be more looking at all the bright side of things when it comes to putting a film together. And I think when you really look for it and you look for a right fit with the right house or the right financier, there is quite a scope now, I think, compared to maybe at a time when they did Salam Bombay, it was a whole other story. But to work with the same director now there's a lot more trust and a lot more faith, and thus a lot more money that gets poured in. And I think to seize the opportunity of that, I think a lot of young filmmakers now need to be bold and brave in sort of seeking that. I think it exists. I think we just tend to be a little conservative about it sometimes.
Sunita, your take?
Oh, sorry. Did you say Shreyashi or Sunita? I can't hear.
Sunita.
Okay.
I think, as Samudrika said that, and Samir are saying, it's just on both the sides. I don't think we can compare ourselves to Marvel budget because their audience, their teachers. When I make a film out of, say, Telugu industry, for also a bit of a pan-India and maybe go into overseas. So story, who we are catering to, I think is most important. Language makes a huge difference. And if you're making a pan-India film, then you have the Hindi language. So for India, the barrier is the language, and the language defines the size of your budget. But if you're making an English film, that is some of the examples you gave, or Slumdog Millionaire, where they chose the language to be English, then suddenly, boom, it goes on. Then suddenly it's a different kind of cinema you are looking at, but based out of India. So suddenly the budget scope allows you to get better technicians, better quality, and all of that. So I personally, for me, budget is never a limit. Like if you look at the Malayalam cinema, they have done some of the quality content with the least amount of budget, and they are so appreciated around the world, So for it, I think it's story that defines the budget. I don't think it's got nothing to do with, as Samudrika is saying, it's just changing. People need to find new ways. Technology is at the fingertips now. So I don't think that should limit us at all.
Shreyashi?
Well, I'm a distributor and a producer. So whenever a script comes to me, the first thing I look at is an ROI. And just like a distributor looks at it saying, will the film or the content recover the financier's investment? And that's where I think the keynote to when I look at a film, and I'm doing an Indian-French film, and where a large part is shot in France, and I know there's a very heavy budget on that end. But what are the kind of partners I'm going to get on board from day one? We need to see that we have distribution partners from day one who can help us look at the ROI and what is it that the film can recover, which makes you relook at the budget. It's almost like you're going backwards, and then you come back to, this is my budget, this is how I'm going to recover it. If you have that in place, a lot of times talking to financiers who are ready to look at films that do not fit the usual checklists, and it's easier for independent producers to look at that. So I feel while budget sometimes is a constraint, and like Samir said that, a lot of times it's only the Indian diaspora and the Indian audience within India that's looked at as far as the ROI and reach is concerned, and budgets somehow kind of, manipulate their way there. I feel if we work backwards on what can the film recover, which are the kind of marketing partners and publicity and distribution partners that can be brought on board to get the film out there. If that plan is in place, a lot of times financiers are very eager to step in with such a changing scenario, and that helps the film. from a big film, which is the Indian French film that I'm producing, to a much smaller film that is being shot with a lot of help from the FFO office in Bundelkhand. And there again, it's a small film, local film, but yet it has such a beautiful story to go out. Financiers have approached us to say, this is a kind of story that is an Indian story which needs to go out beyond the audience. Let's come and take it because it's a global story and be part of that path. That we're taking a very, very local, very, very intrinsic village story, but it has a part to go out. So I think a lot of planning goes just beyond the budget on who are the partners you bring on board. For me, it helps because it's unmindfully when I see a script, I think of ROIs and the reach of the audience beyond an Indian diaspora.
Thanks. So, as they say, it all begins with a story. And, there are two very contrary viewpoints on what kind of stories we should be making to cater to international market. There's one school of thought which says, if you want to go to the market, make stories that they want to hear. Something like your Mekalu burgers that McDonald's has over here, or your paneer tikka pizzas that Domino's has. And on the other hand, there's this whole different viewpoint which says that, here's what makes us unique: our song and dance, our melodrama, our over-the-topness. So, cash in on that. Where do you guys sit on that side of the fence? Samudrika?
Well, my philosophy has always been to tell authentic stories. If that means, I don't know what side of the fence that lands in, but it really, for me, it always means that what feels good to me and true to me, there's got to be a lot more people who are into it as well. So I kind of trust that. I've grown up watching films that I suppose were out of the box, and as have my peers. And so there's definitely an audience. There's definitely an audience for all types. But I think the best films that are, that end up being classics are really the brave ones that are authentic and that don't necessarily go too deep into figuring out what the right formula is. I think if there's too much science and research involved, you sort of lose a thread of the passion that goes behind storytelling. And it's really through stories, what we're communicating is passion about somebody's life or a situation or an event. And if you lose that, you sort of lose the whole purpose of storytelling in the first place. So that's really where I personally stand on that.
And what about you, Samir?
Well, I think our industry is quite a complex industry, because I think the divide between the two kinds of filmmaking, let's call it independent filmmaking and Bollywood, are so diverse. I mean, I think Korean cinema is a great example of this whole journey, where finally in the beginning, it's the local audiences that enjoy the film. Then it becomes regional, and then with Parasite or with Bad Boy, I mean, I think Korean cinema has gone completely global. And of course, that's when also the budgets come in. For us, it's more complicated because, the 4 or 5 films that I have produced, will not get a theatrical, because I don't think the majority of the Indian audiences enjoy that kind of film. But they had great festival journeys. They were, very critically acclaimed. We got many prizes all over. We won a national award, etc., etc. But I think when it comes to audiences and box office, we are very, towards one kind of cinema that really we enjoy, and that's somewhere Bollywood.
Sureshi?
I have a little bit of a different perspective, which is the theatrical windows are shifting and shrinking, so to say. Even some of the biggest films, so 2 things have happened. There's a shrinking window, and I'm seeing from a distribution point of view, audiences have moved away from always having this huge following of the big budget films. Some of the biggest budget films, without taking names, have been trashed by the audience in recent times. And smaller films have found a heart. But yes, maybe they have not found a great theatrical window. Anyway, if it's like a 4-week window now, where within 4 weeks you have to then move to an OTT, it definitely is a pinch for a lot of producers and investors. But the audience has, and I've noticed, one is moved away to mainly also, I think, this whole COVID crisis where people have been home and have been watching a lot of content on their gadgets. And they've been exposed to a plethora of languages, not just Indian, across the globe. And I'm seeing, even among friends who would only watch Hindi films, have now shifted even within India to watch Malayalam, Marathi, Bengali films. So that change, it gives me a lot of, I would say, I'm very excited to see what happens once the theaters do open up, because I started off with distributing independent cinema, and it wasn't easy, because even in Singapore, or be it in India, if you're going to a theater to distribute an independent content, you're given a 4 p.m. on Friday, an 11 a.m. on Saturday, and a 4 p.m. on Sunday, and nobody turns up. So Monday, your film is thrown out. But with the way things have changed, from audience as well as the theatrical windows and the advent of VOD, I see it as a very exciting time for content, as long as you can tell real stories that people can identify with. They have moved away from that kind of heroic films and, centered on a certain very aspirational kind of lifestyle and big budgets. We are at a very, very exciting time, Nitin, and I am very excited because the kind of projects I'm doing are underlying this change and trend of audience evolution.
Sabita?
Well, I have a very personal take on this. For me, what kind of cinema doesn't come by either where it is shown or whatever. The way I look at it is, one emotion is very common to all of us that resonates across the 7 billion and above is the heart. So I believe in telling heartful stories. I believe in stories that resonate global culture, that brings out a sense of uplifting humanity and human spirit in us, and all my stories do that. And the only thing I try to stay and try to make a big deal about is that I particularly tell stories from south of India, because the whole world sees India as Bollywood, whereas we are many languages and many culture and many tribes. And for me, at least in my lifetime, if I can take a film from south of India and win an Oscar, that's a dream come true for me.
So as we all know, making a film is formidable enough. Selling it is even more so. And Samir, you mentioned the fact that Hollywood's marketing and financial muscle is very, very hard to overcome. So Sureshi, since you've had experience distributing globally, can you tell us how different is it to market a film in the international market vis-a-vis India?
I think if we start at the very beginning, even when someone's making a film, and when I've met directors at film financing markets where I'm an influencer, a lot of, and even students from film schools that I'm meeting in India and elsewhere, I think a key part that is ignored is distribution and marketing, mainly distribution. And everybody is taught the art of filmmaking and how to make great content, but then what do you do with it? So I think where I see a very big difference between international productions and markets that I've been to is there we start the filmmaking and selling process sometimes from the story idea stage. Not when the film is already made and you then need to push for distribution. I've been distributing even independent content and aggregating content, and there's nothing been done as partnerships at that stage, either because it's not been a trend, or it's because they don't have the access to reach the right people. And there's excellent content that's being made in India, unheard of filmmakers maybe, but brilliant stuff. And I only hope when I see these films that I wish they had gone to markets at the scripting stage and talked to sales agents. So that's a very big difference I notice of the planning of distribution at a much more initial stage, and it comes on to quite at the end. And the other thing is most of the films in India I've noticed, and I still don't want to generalize, I'm sure there's a different trend that's starting and I'm seeing that, but everybody's eyeing a theatrical window rather than what are the other avenues that this film can reach. And many a times when an independent film fails at the theatrical window, sadly, even if it's great content, the audience may have not heard of it because it's not been able to market itself the way it could with huge amounts of dollars and cents, or it really hasn't reached the audiences for other reasons. What happens is even the dollars and cents that comes back from the sale of the film, because the theatrical has been dismal, doesn't sell, and the film just gets canned, which is heart-wrenching for a distributor as well as a content maker. So I think the trend and the process needs to change. There needs to be various avenues for these films to start reaching markets, even way before its production and principal photography stage.
Does anyone else have a take on sales and marketing or any personal experience that you want to share here?
I was just thinking. I mean, it's a very hypothetical situation. But what if there was a festival film? I mean, the festival for independent films, it's often the festival journey that you take. You know, if it wins awards, if it goes to major film festivals, if it gets good reviews, yes, in a certain way, you might get a theatrical release in India, or your film might be bought by an OTT platform. The hypothetical situation is, not Adil Hussain or Manoj Bajpayee or Irfan, but what if Shah Rukh Khan or or Akshay Kumar or one of the big stars acts in an independent film? Where would that film go? And if it does the festival circuit, they walk the red carpet, can it come back to India and have successes with the Indian audiences? I mean, that's a question. I don't know.
That you never know.
Yes. So I think we really need the support of the industry in a certain way to kind of help lift or widen the audience, the audience preferences. I'm not saying ignore Bollywood, but why not widen, what people like, the kind of filmmaking that people like, and that's what, for example, countries like Korea and Iran and I don't know and other countries have done. Of course, we are a much more complex nation and with so many languages. But I think with the help of studios and with the help of the big stars, I think we can get much more global than this.
So now let's touch upon something that Neerja ji mentioned in the keynote. Now I'll just share some figures with you. Bajrangi Bhaijaan made $2.8 million in the North American box office and 1.2 million at the UK box office. In China, it made $45 million. Let's come to Dangal now. It made $12.4 million in North America, 2.8 in UK, and 195 million in China. So are we barking up the wrong tree? Are we so obsessed with, getting success in LA and New York that we're actually forgetting where our true markets could be? Samudrika, please.
It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one because these are two very, exceptional examples that you don't come by every day. So it's a really good question, and I feel like to go back to what Shriyasi was saying earlier, when it came to distribution and audience, I think her point is very important and should really be reiterated, which is when you're really at the script stage, you should really start thinking about your audiences. I think to think about distribution as an afterthought of making a film is not as efficient a plan as it would be when you're really scripting, really birthing your idea, and really looking at the world as where your audiences lie. I think, I don't know about both Dangal and Bajrangi Bhaijaan if they'd actually foreseen that. I'm not sure if they had foreseen that, or it was planned, or it just happened to be that Amir Khan is a superstar in China. So all these are sort of things that you creatively put together. The creative aspect, as you said, is not just the filmmaking and studying the filmmaking, but the creative aspect actually starts from the birth of the idea of really looking at what different mixes of a scenario that has never been put together can be put together this time. And I think that is where you find success. I think when Dangal was made, it had never been done before in that sort of no one had done, no one had thought about a distribution plan like that, and they did, and they succeeded. And same with, I would say, Nomadland right now. No one had thought in the middle of a pandemic that you would come up with a story from the middle of America, which is now going to be watched all over India and all over China and make huge, huge success at the awards, but also at the box office. So it's very interesting. I think you have to, I don't think there's a formula, but I think you have to keep your eyes and ears open and your senses all nourished and educated right from when you're starting out on an idea.
Anything to add, Sarita, on that point?
Yes, I have to kind of come back to what Tracy is saying, that we all start a film with a certain cost and we always keep the ROI in mind. Do remember, China is not part of any producer's ROI a few years back. And right now it is, but how much we can depend on it going forward. Like my last film I have sold for Chinese distribution, but my current film, it's a great film. I know I get a great money, but I don't know if I can sell it because the last one didn't release it. It's in the pipeline. So it's been 2 years. So you can't depend on that as an immediate ROI. Someone who's been in the distribution space, he might say, you know what, just let it be there. Don't count on it. We don't know if you will ever get that money. So we are still not sure. So we still have to depend on, like, we never thought an OTT existed earlier. It's a new form of revenue for any, and suddenly it's the prime revenue in the pandemic time. So all my films, 3 of them in the pipeline, are now going to the OTT. And I am kind of swinging towards that direction because I don't know what will happen to the box office. So as I said, it's in a very, very fluid state right now. So many new revenue forms are coming, and we don't know how many will stay as we go forward. We know for sure there is a box office. We don't know now. Then there is an OTT, which is huge right now. Then you have some fixed, but all these other, it's like a cherry on the cake. You can still need to taste the cake. Let cherry be there or not. So that's my take on that.
We seem to be running out of time, so let's take some audience questions. There's one. At the center of it all is the script. Does it help to have the script go through international writing labs or co-production markets to find global relevance? Sriyashi?
Yes, absolutely. I have a film that is a film, the story travels from Kerala to Malaysia. And we went through script labs because we wanted to see that are we restricting our audiences only to these 2 countries, Malaysia and India? And we were lucky to have on board, and my director is Malaysian Singaporean, and he's directing a Tamil Malay film. We have a Taiwanese come Hollywood script doctor who has been looking at the script, and the way he looked at it and certain things that he gave inputs on has completely changed the film to a way where we even have a little bit of an interest from one of the big studios to say, well, this is the kind of international projects that would be. And there were things which my director and I kind of overlooked because you start to own the project so much, at times you lose objectivity. And then when a third eye comes in, or even a fourth eye. So even like for my French Indian film, I'm going to get a script doctor from Europe because the script initially has been written by an Indian writer. And it looks fabulous, and my French collaborators love it. But what is the other eye that you need? So I guess that's quite essential. Especially with the kind of content that we're looking of, where audience appeal would be about the story at its heart, and they should be able to identify with it and not just keep it to stories that our Indian audiences would be comfortable because they know the events that have happened, they know the nuances, but a global audience might just be left out in the dark with even references that they don't understand, but we would very easily. So when we write or read that script, we think it's fine, but we haven't, we come with a mindset that we already understand an event that's been referred to. But the global audience doesn't, and you relook at that script in a different way. So I absolutely think that script doctoring, especially if you are looking at, and we should look at all these, this great content going out there for the large audience, to have script doctoring, depending on which part you're concentrating on for the film to travel to.
Your take, Sameer?
I completely agree with that. I mean, I feel if a film goes through all these labs and all this process, it also gets a certain kind of exposure. It is written about. You get different people that get involved with the film because the film is being talked about. You get different kinds of partners. So I think pre-production is as important, or maybe more important than production itself. And this whole journey is a part of that pre-production.
For the audience, I just want you to know that there's one very important thread we haven't really touched upon, which is the role of OTT and film festivals in this whole journey of Indian cinema globally. I believe that's a subject of a separate discussion altogether. So we are keeping it for there. So I think we are pretty much out of time. So maybe we could all end up with each of you sharing that one thing you would like to see to help you make your global film. Samudrika, maybe you can kick this off.
There's a lot I would like to see, actually. There's a lot to go. There's a long, long way. But I think the one thing I would really like to see is more openness from, I think it starts at home. So I think a lot more openness from home. That would then allow us to understand and interact with what it is that the outside world seeks or is curious about when it comes to our films, and then subsequently sort of deliver that based on that. So I think nothing really works, as we've seen on a film set, nothing really works without openness. And to take that on a grander scale, I think on a world platform, there just needs to be a lot more of that interaction and a lot more of that understanding between cultures to then actually be able to make something great.
Sunita?
You said Sunita?
Yeah, I said
so. I think the time has come for us as a country to tell stories that resonate globally. We are a country of many states, many languages, and we have a great opportunity, I think, as a nation to make an impact in the space of global storytelling. I feel the openness that Samudrika is talking about and the diversity that Shreyasi has mentioned. And I think the idea here is to stay open and willingness to tell a story that appeals to the humanity. I think we have that in us. I mean, come on, we are the country that took yoga to the West, that took Vedanta to the West. It's time to tell our storytelling to all over the world.
Samir?
Well, I'm going to be more simplistic if we're talking about taking Indian cinema global. I would like to see an Indian film in Cannes main competition. And I would like to see an Indian film being nominated at the Oscars for Best Film.
Great. I'm sure all of us do. Shreyashi, your closing remarks?
I guess, as an industry, we've realized how productive we can still be with a laptop, a kitchen table, and a Zoom window. But I do always hope and keep hoping that, this crisis goes, because human interactions and creativity can't be restricted to 30-minute Zoom windows. And while that happens, and I'm, maybe hoping for a miracle with this crisis, I want to see more women making women's stories. Women behind the camera, more inclusivity and diversity on sets, where especially in a society where we always talk about patriarchy, there are women calling the shots. And of course, I would love to see producers from India look at directors from other parts of the world to make films in India, and maybe Indian stories, because it's simply, if you're walking down the road, if I go to Delhi, I'd be taking pictures of things which my friends in Delhi say, that's worthy to take a photograph of. It's the same thing of looking at Indian stories with a different eye and taking it out globally. I just hope we get to see that day. But one small thing which I always struggle with, and I hope to find that too, and that's to Nija ma'am, and to have more accessibility to good actors who are maybe big. Sometimes it's so difficult to get to them. So I hope that kind of transparency and accessibility also opens up. But that's a lot to ask for maybe, but I'm hopeful.
Great. So I'm afraid we actually overshot the time allotted to us. So thank you, Neerja ji, for your keynote address and this great panel for your very, very important and useful insights. And thank you, Ministry of Information Broadcasting and FICCI for giving us this opportunity. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
You.
Thank you.
everyone.